Let the goddess be praised.
See, she's telepathic, call it black girl magic. Yeah, she scares the government, deja vu of men. We go missing by the hundreds. Everybody check the bus. The camera loves us, Oscar doesn't. They want us in the kitchen, kill our sons with lynchings. We get loud about it. Oh, now we're the bitches. Look at what they did to my sister last century, last week. They put her body in a jar and forget her. They love how we repeat. Look at what they did to my sister last century, last week. They make her hate her own skin, treat her like a sin. But what they don't understand, but what they don't understand, but what they don't understand, see what they don't understand. See, she's telepathic, call it black girl magic. Yeah, she scares the government, deja vu of men. She don't give up. Yeah, she don't give up. She don't give up. No, she don't give up. Rosa was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Ella was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Audrey was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. And Della was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. So Jenna was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Alfata was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Rosa was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Ella was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. See, she's telepathic, call it black girl magic. Yeah, she scares the government, deja vu of men. But what they don't understand, but what they don't understand, but what they don't understand, see what they don't understand. She don't give up. Yeah, she don't give up. She don't give up. No, she don't give up.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. I want to welcome you to Udja Temple. I am, if you do not know, Reverend Majadi Baruti. I'm the chief priest of Udja Temple, a space for the celebration, the learning to coexist in a space where Goddess is present, where the remembrance of the goddess is ever present. We are building a space for that. That is the intent, the ultimate intent. I am just mother's little chatty doll. That's my entire purpose here. We want to return to she who is eternal. We want to return to a way of living where we are not without our magic, and we are not without love of the mother. And so I welcome you to Udja Temple as we move ourselves towards establishing or reestablishing the understanding that goddess, Black goddess, was before the first, and there will be no after her. Everything else falls in line with that. So that particular goddess spell song, a beautiful song, was by Jamila Woods, a song called Black Girl Soldier, and we thank her for her magic herself and bringing that forth. Let us go into prayer. Oh, Blessed Mother, Mother of all Mother, she who is every bit of everything that has ever been, she who is eternal, she who is infinite, she who holds the Vajra, she who holds the lightning, she who holds the honey and the pomegranate, the collard green, she who feeds us, she who starves the ego to death, she who brings us wonder, she who is wonder, she who is without alpha, and she who certainly has no omega, she who brings forth sun and moon, stars, because she is the womb of space and the womb of that. She is the evermore, the everlasting. There is nothing that surpasses her, nothing that passes her, nothing that takes her, moves her, pushes her, but herself. We give honor to the great Black goddess who has 10,000 by 10,000 names, and none of them are incorrect or wrong. Whatever name she is called on the planet by her children and by those who seek to harm her children, by whatever name you call our mother, she is still mother. We give honor and glory to our ancestresses, the women who walked, the women who prayed, the women who had faith and hope, the women who brought resistance as we celebrate Women's History Month, and radical engagement and revolution, and brought spiritual consciousness to our revolutionary struggles on the planet. The great Black goddess was with those ancestresses, and they are with us. There is no separation between ourselves and our ancestresses. We are our ancestors and ancestresses. We are our ancestors and ancestresses, and I will say that again. We are our ancestors. We are our ancestresses. Period. We give honor and praise to our elder mothers, those who still walk a path with us and give us wisdom even when we decide not to take the grace of said wisdom and do the thing that the fool does, because that's kind of a human thing. We give honor to our elder mothers. We thank you, mothers, for being present, for popping our hand when we say something or do something stupid. That's a lot of popping, mother. Thank you. Thank you very much. I give honor to my priestess, Marit Sechat, she who is a visionary, I ask for a blessing on her spirit and her physical body, her heart, her mind, her soul, and her very beingness as she walks the path of holiness and divinity and teaches us of the sacred in the earth. Ashe, Ashe, and Ashe. So let's go ahead and get started. Our message, our inspired message given by Mother in her many, many ways of bringing sometimes the comical, sometimes the very challenging ways of us learning who she is so that we can be with her, so that we can have a better life, right? Mother is the all embrace that we have always needed, but sometimes we fight against. Thank her for that. As we begin to challenge some of the thought processes, we're going to do a lot of thinking. This is a very reasoning oriented message. You know, sometimes you got to go and do some brain work. Sometimes some of it is spirit. Udja Temple has always been the space for the science and the spirituality as one construct. Today, we're going to deal with a little bit of symbology. I won't be very long. I will not hold you very long. Symbology, right? Symbols and their meaning. So our message. Serpents, fruit, or serpents, trees, and fruit. So see, Reverend Baruti, are you just going to talk about the symbology of serpents, trees, and fruit? No, we're going to get into some of the metaphysics and the spirituality and the psychological constructs of some of these things and where we need to be moving to be in the space that we need to be in. So let's talk about first symbols. Everybody thinks they know what a symbol means. They have an understanding. Symbol, something that stands for something else. We sometimes oversimplify that. Let me give you a little depth here. Let's go into the deeper part of Mother's waters, shall we? They are used, symbols have been historically, and when men began to control the narrative of history, historically, symbols have been used to relate large concepts often to lots of people. Large concepts to lots of people. Let's take something simple that we deal with many of us deal with on a daily basis, those of us who drive, because all of us can't drive. We may be impaired, quote unquote, in some way. They use that word impaired because often people who are visually, physically impaired in some shape, form, or fashion have skill sets that far exceed the ones of us who claim that we don't have some form of impairment, but we all do, all 7 billion of us. We have an impairment like you would not believe. There is something wrong with you. There's something wrong with me. Nonetheless, we have a general understanding of things like the stop sign. Remember, Baruti, we're talking traffic. Yes, we are. Movement. We're talking movement. So the stop sign, the stop sign, you're driving, or you're being driven somewhere, or you're riding in a bus or whatever, a bicycle for that matter, skateboard. You see the stop sign and you stop. At least you're quote unquote supposed to, because otherwise you will be stopped. We know that there are some nuances to stopping at a stop sign or stoplight. Someone, a quote unquote authority of the state, may tell you that you did not stop at stop signs, you did not stop at stop lights, that you ran them so that they can pull you over, some force of the state. And we're going to get into some of that dynamic in a little bit as well. But you understand clearly that you are supposed to stop when you see that red stop sign or that red stop light. You understand that. You understand it so deeply because it has been repeatedly told to you since you have been able to grasp red, grasp octagons, or grasp signage. You know you're supposed to stop at that stop sign, don't you? Sometimes you don't because you're lunching, you're on that little cell phone thingy. Sometimes you're blabbering to a friend, or you're going through some type of emotional thing and you won't stop at that stop sign and you run it and maybe something happens, and let's hope it doesn't happen. And we don't want that to happen. I want you to stop at stop signs, not because the popo might come and get you necessarily, but because I don't want you to be hurt, whether it be the popo or it be the pole. You dig? I want you to be safe. I'm not suggesting that you run stop signs. What I am suggesting is that the stop sign is a symbol. It's so deep that if I took STONP off of the stop sign, you saw the red octagon, guess what you're going to do? You're going to stop. You're going to stop. Because you have been trained to do so. You have been told you had better do so. You are going to do so. You are going to stop at said stop sign. I'll bet you nothing that you are going to stop at that stop sign. You are going to do it because you were told to do it. Because someone said you had better do it. Because you were trained to do it. And it was repeated, wasn't it? Right? It was repeatedly told to you to stop at that stop sign. You can't even help it. You just do it. Take that STOP off of there and you do it. You do it. Now, let's take, for example, that we take the red off of the stop sign. We still have it as an octagon, and we have STOP, maybe in you could a faded white, perhaps, with a white background. That red is a little bit more effective in causing you to stop. But still, if you see the word STOP and that octagon there, you will more than likely, maybe a little less, because you brain may not relate that not being red there. You will more than likely though stop. Let's just put an octagon up there, no STOP and no red color. It's quite possible that your brain will stop. You will stop. You will stop at that octagon with no writing and no red. It's been so ingrained in you, so socialized in you, and that's what we're getting into, right? You have been so socialized into that understanding that you have to stop at said stop sign, that those things removed, some things removed, you will automatically do it. You will even pause sometimes if there's no stop sign at all, sometimes. So you can look both ways to make sure you don't get hurt and that you don't hurt anyone else. But it's a type of training, right? It's a type of training based on that symbol and that meaning. It is psychological because of the training, the repeated thing. There's also some dynamic of spirituality, but we'll get into some of that. You're controlled by the state. We know that the stop sign is there to keep us safe. And yet, even with that stop sign, we're being controlled in a way. And again, I don't want you to go out and run stop signs and stop lights just to be a revolutionary, because I don't want you to have problems with your physicality if you should run said stoplight and run into another object that has problems with its physicality. Two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time, ish, because it actually can't happen like that. That's another story. It's another metaphysical conversation. We're talking about a type of control of social behavior based on symbols. Okay? The symbols of the Great Mother, the symbols of ancient spirituality rooted in the goddess. I've told you before, we've taught before, that when the original goddess believing people, because she was the first understanding of deity, when they moved throughout the earth, when they trod the earth, they took with them not only their culture, but they took their understanding. They didn't leave goddess, they didn't leave culture, they left with her and with culture. And wherever they were, they moved with goddess there. It is then a process of those human beings, those male men run cultures, to begin to displace mother. We've talked about this before. Go back to some of our prior works. The displacement of mother begins the first sin we talked about. The first sin is the displacement of mother. A powerful way to do that is to start to define, control that definition, and redefine the definition of symbology and certain symbols and meaning. And why do you do that? Because once you've begun to take control of a people, you need to keep control of them. You can't just stop controlling them, right? You study basic history. When someone colonized someone else, they didn't just colonize and then leave 3 days later. They stayed there. And in that staying, is backed by a militarized construct all the time. The idea that I will harm you, the idea that I will beat you or stab you or shoot you or hurt you and your children in some shape, form, or fashion is always backed with that warfare. It is the same thing with spiritual warfare. The idea that we have that males, and this is still, even for those of us who are constantly fighting to push back, we are constantly, in as much as we're challenging patriarchy, we're constantly thinking about patriarchy. I literally wake up thinking, oh, thank you, Mother, for letting me be here. I give my praise. I perform prayer and meditation. And then I began a process of thinking how to make sure that I don't behave in a patriarchal way because I am a male, a hetero male walking about with hetero maleness and manhood, whatever the hell that is. And I have to constantly remind myself to be inside of mother, to be with mother, to be in her bosom, to be in her heart. Because patriarchy is rooted in some of everything that we are, think, and do. But that's spiritual warfare. Let's get back into this spiritual warfare, the spiritual colonization of space. It was a militarized one. Physical force of colonization and the physical force of men is embedded in religion. Uh-oh, he did it again. It is embedded in religion. The three major Western religions and quite a number of other religions on the planet. Patriarchy is embedded there. The idea that man is somehow man, human male, somehow superior to woman and all other things and beingness. In the universe, the idea that God is male and can only be male. And if you contradict that, we will cause you harm. That kind of vibration brings a military dynamic with it. Colonization is a process of there's a militarized dynamic there. Spiritual colonization is the same thing. Part of that spiritual colonization is the colonization of those ideas about what was there prior to the colonizer coming in. I am suggesting from studies of several works that I've read, studied over many years, prayed over, been rained on by mother and women with, elder women, wise women, women who were friends, women who were lovers, about the understanding of goddess and that she was first. I learned it from the women. And I still study with the women through the goddess, or through the women by the goddess's will for me to be able to do so. I am blessed in that way. And because I am, and listen, and in listening, and in reading, and in studying, and in going into the experience of meditation and vision and dream, I begin to understand that those first spiritual understandings were of the goddess, and that she would move forward through the planet with her children. They carried mama with them. Mama was with them in spirit, in soul, in heart, mind, and in physicality and body. In statuettes, in dolmens, in blood. We talked about the power of the menstrual blood loosely. There are some sisters that really lay that out way better than I could. I have an understanding of the power of the blood. And when I've gone to churches and I hear, even when I was younger, 20 years old, and I would visit a church because perhaps there was a reason for me to visit your church, and I would do that and visit so I could hear. And I would hear the preacher say, the blood, it's all about the blood. Oh, my friend, yes, it is. But it's not a man's blood or man's sacrifice. It is the giving of woman and its ability for her to regenerate and, in essence, recreate herself through the menstrual cycle and the blood flowing and the sisters putting the blood into the soil. Where'd you think it went? You think it threw it up in the sky and it disappeared? No, stupid man. It's not what happens. She's not broken. Your brain is broken, brother, thinking that there's something wrong with her. There have been stories that men have told about the blood. This is one of those symbols. I didn't really mean to get into this particular symbol, but let's go here and let's follow this and let's get back into the main three symbols we want to discuss. But let's really talk about the blood. She bleeds, those who do, and she doesn't die. An excessive amount often of blood. And that blood itself actually can help with the building of soil. That's a whole other conversation. She's not dying. Some brothers can prick their little fingers. And I meant to do that just like that. They can prick their fingers. Tough guy. You prick your finger and you feel like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Tough guy. You're a real man. And you just lose your entire mind. Oh, I've got an earache, darling. I've my ear. Oh, my heart. Oh, my leg. I hurt my ankle. Oh, poor baby. She bleeds every month, repeatedly, for a number of years of her life. And obviously there's some differentiation of how that happens and when it happens and if it happens at all. But that's a general concept of womanhood. And she doesn't die. You think you a badass. You's a little punk. You little pansy. No, let me not disrespect pansy. Pansies are nice flowers. Moving on. Here she is, unstoppable in that way. But men begin to define the term blood and redefine it and control the definition of it based on a maintenance of power. He understood that her blood meant in essence that she is immortal. You know that men in ancient times didn't even understand that it was the woman that is producing the child. In fact, I don't think men really understand that now. considering conversations around abortion and whatnot. They don't understand that she's the power there. You're doing some contribution, but you're not causing the pregnancy, dummy. You're not. I need you to read a book or 8. You're not, brother. You're not causing, it's not even remotely how that happens. And we'll, at some point, maybe in some of our classes, if we establish classes for Udja Temple, we'll talk about that, brother. But you're not causing the pregnancy. Oh, I got her pregnant. No, you didn't. You assisted in the process, and that's again another story. But that control of that conversation, right? And the control over the conversation and the narrative and the actuality, the historical reality. You can go either way, historical, it don't matter, because it's still about her. And the religious constructs around that, the secret rites and the holiness and the sacredness of the blood, for instance, is there. And here now comes the role of religion. Men put together a religion, and I have some conversation about that. I've been told by an elder that women created religion for men because women don't need religion themselves. I was told that in a circle of sisters. I was invited to sit in a circle of women to listen, and that's all I did. I just I listened. And one of the elder sisters said, well, we created religion for men to control themselves. But as is usual with your child, you can give it a toy, and then he does something completely different with it. And that's what men did. So we have this religion rooted in patriarchy and the power of males over everything. The power of God is in him now. And he begins with the power to define and control and name and subname and subjugate and conjugate verbs and flip words upside down and backwards and tear them and rip them and make sentences and stories that denied his mother. Those stories and those narratives and those written words and the spoken word, now forgotten. Plus the violence, the physical and the spiritual violence, you're just a woman. Which was backed by his physical presence and his physical accoutrement. Because he ain't got nothing else. It's damn sure not intellectual or spiritual superiority. It is a diabolical process by which he gained power. The physical destruction of ancient goddess complexes, temples, the usurpation of her crown and her throne. We talked about the throne. And the replacing of that narrative that was the original story of mother and her blood, and who she is, her sexuality, her beingness, her fertility, her boundlessness, and her being the creator of all things that have ever been and that will ever be. She is the creator of all worlds yet to come. But the control of that narrative through physical force, the only possibility that he has to conquer women is through some dynamic or physical force or the threat thereof. He began to define the goddess symbols themselves. Like serpent. If you're sensitive to your religious constructs, I suggest you shut this off. Not really particular about hurting people's feelings when it comes to mother. I'm going to tell it like a TI is. So here she goes. The symbol of the serpent, the snake. Snakes get a bad name and a bad rap. Serpent, that old serpent, the devil. From some studies, the devil or devil comes from the root word devi. It's a Sanskrit word, D-E-V-I, which means goddess. See how that works? So here is, let's go into the story. Let's just go into the story, right? Here's Eve. And you know, there was a conversation about Lilith. Lilith, who refused to submit to Adam because she was like, I hear several versions of it. One of them is that she would not submit to his word, and she would not submit to what they call missionary style when it comes to sexuality. That's a story. Woman on Top. Woman on Top is a lecture we've done before with Udja Temple before, myself, along with Priestess Merit Seshad. But because Lilith was a bad girl, bad Lilith, and she would not submit, she was banished from said garden. That was his first wife. He was a husband. The terms are really bizarre to me. Husband, dealing with husbandry, the control of animals. There's a whole other conversation there. I give honor and I give blessings and love to the people that I have married. I've never really liked those terms, husband and wife. We may have to come up with something different for our work at Udja Temple. Nevertheless, here is the serpent. And here is Eve now, talking to the serpent, who's in a tree. And of course, you know there's a fruit involved, and we'll get into some of those constructs, or you can begin to outline this stuff for yourself as we go forward, right? So here is the serpent. What does the serpent mean? What is the symbol of this thing? She's literally talking to a snake, is she? The serpent in ancient culture, and there are many ways to study this, serpent, serpentine dynamics, imagery, has been around since the beginning of us, the goddess worshiping people of ancient Africa, who traveled and moved throughout the planet. The serpent, the snake, the symbol of mother, and she's everywhere. She's in all kinds of culture. You can look at her in South America. You can look at her in Europe, ancient Europe, in Asia, and of course on the continent of Africa. Here in North and South America, there are stories about the serpent. Often it is associated with a woman. It's also associated with fertility, spirituality, the closeness with the land, the secrets of the earth, regeneration, and indeed, sexuality. Woman's sexuality, very specifically. And then the symbolism of the serpent. In some stories, some narratives from religion is reinterpreted. Because if you're going to control someone's sexuality, fertility, spirituality, closest with the land, the seed, the soil, the sun, the tree, the fruit, well, damn it. And the power of regeneration as well. You've got to change that story, take that story out or add to it, revised. You ever read the Bible? I did. When I was 13 years old, I read it like a book because I thought that's how you're supposed to do the thing. In the beginning, it literally says it is revised. It's revised. The Quran, revised. Oops. And now this serpent story, you can imagine there in the beginning, here's man, he's talking to his dad. So dad, I'm by myself, I need something. So as the story goes, he was laid down to sleep by his dad. He snapped a bone and he made a woman. You see the power there, right? He is created, she is made. These are two completely different things. They're nothing like make something, you start from other things that already to create something, you start from nothing. So that's nothingness, this power of this God. And see, we've all got this thing in our head that men are made from nothing, that we are some ethereal, powerful, all godlike being because we're just like dad. And woman, she kind of like us, mankind. She's a supplement, a complement sometimes. That's the perception. And the perception is wrong. Very, very wrong. She is who gives birth. And if you really look at the beginnings of these holy books, you will find a couple of dynamics. Water, a little bit of warmth, and darkness or blackness. All of us come out of blackness, and warmth, and nutrition, and water in the womb. All of us do. You can't be born without being born. You dig? If you think you can be born without being born, well, you go ahead and die and do it. But you can't be born without being born. And you can't give birth to yourself. Mother has to do this. Men are not giving birth to women. And I understand there's a deeper conversation there. I understand that. But for the purpose of the physicality of what we're talking about, the birthing construct comes from woman. And it comes from her mother, who gave birth to the man through her. There is a concept called parthenogenesis, which we will not cover today because we don't have the time. I'm sorry. But we will talk about that at some point, maybe, in a class. But this symbolism of this serpent, we're talking about her sexuality and her wisdom. Wisdom is another tenet of serpent in spiritual understanding, spirituality, fertility, and closeness with the land, secrets of the earth, regeneration that you can hear in that wisdom. People think knowledge is over wisdom. That's not how that works. Knowledge assists wisdom in bringing forth the understanding. It's not, at any rate. The symbolism of the serpent in these ancient books and the perpetuation of the thought that snakes are bad and evil and repressive and all this type of thing is repression itself. And this idea that this woman is having this conversation with this snake, with this serpent, right? And in that conversation, he tells her to do something wicked. That's the conversation. It's not the reality, because what did we define those things to be? What do we find this serpent to be? Sexuality. So she's having a conversation with her own sexuality and understanding, why is this dude telling me what to do with my body? Why is this guy telling me what to do with my spirituality? Why is he telling me what to do with my closeness to the land, even to the point of taking the seed from me? And we're going to get into that in a little bit as well. Taking the seed from me and controlling the seed. Did you know that in ancient cultures, women control the seed? Doesn't that make sense? Women had the seed. Women have the seed. Men are assisting in the nutritive value. He provides a fertilization construct, and that is actually a biological fact. That's what he does. He is not sending forth the sperm to find the egg. The egg chooses the sperm and then breaks it to get the nutrition and the power out of it. That's what actually happens. The egg is doing the thing. Mother is doing the thing, not the sperm. and in beingness and in the universality of everything, the womb, the mother, is all. So this serpent, that perpetual connection to the land and the air and water, all at the same time, and its ability to shed its skin to become something new, regeneration. Woman, what does she do? Women who bleed. She sheds that blood and she becomes anew. That's why there were ancient celebrations, and there are still some sisters on the planet who celebrate the menses. And there are some brothers I have seen. I have been in part of full moon ritual, and we will establish those types of things in Udja Temple. The sisters will, I should say. I won't do that. I can be invited. I'll probably go sit somewhere and cook dinner for everyone, that type of thing. You dig? But there are, the red tent celebrations of the menstrual cycle and the power therein. There's an entire book, and I cannot think of the author nor the book, that is written on the power of menstrual blood and how it bleeds, how it is throughout the planet, and how it has basically been the structure for how society has been created. But that serpent dealt with that sexuality and that fertility and spirituality, and those things are not exclusive of each other. They are the same conversation. Snakes are not bad. Serpents are not bad or evil or repressive. That's your wisdom. It's a symbol of your wisdom. So she's having this conversation, right, with this snake, the serpent in this tree, about this fruit. And what is the fruit? Let's move into the trees. Trees lose their leaves and enter a death-like hibernation for a few months, don't they? But come springtime, and what is springtime? Regeneration. You see that connection to the serpent, right? Things shed, women shed, life sheds, and things come back and spring to life. The goddess replenishes herself. Women replenish themselves. The planet replenishes itself. The wonder of the water replenishes itself. Things, I have conversations with people about finitude, finiteness when it comes to water. Well, we only have a finite amount of water. You could say that, but the water regenerates itself. The earth regenerates itself. It cleanses itself. And so this woman. She is more in tune with the planet than men are. So here are these trees. Every year, and in some places, depending on the type of tree, not so much, but there is a hibernating stage, a dying away. The winter has come. Oh, it's getting deep. The winter has come. It gets cold. Death is approaching. Mother is death as well. Darkness. She is the cold. And as everything is dying, everything is going to sleep. Death is a cousin of sleep. And there is their mother as well. Again, that's getting into some Greek mythology. We won't get into that too detailed right now in the class. I promise you, I'm going to go ahead and make classes for Udja Temple. And we can find ways that we can exchange energy. So here is this tree of life, a symbol of a fresh start on life, positive energy, good health, and a bright future. Blooms and leaves, it's born again, it dies. And here is this man telling this woman, you can't, baby, you can't. I know all the things that girl, he made me first, and then, you my rib, baby. Yeah, I had my ex-wife, Lilith. She was crazy. She wanted to be on. Don't listen to that snake, baby. God told us not to. Dad said, don't listen to that snake, baby. Why you listen to that snake? You just screwed us up. Now we messed up. But the tree has very ancient origins with the goddess. I'm going to stop that story and go here. In the eastern sky is a tall tree, the summer tree, a cosmic tree, where the gods would sit in the west. And in the west is the divine cow or cattle, Het-Heru, also called Hathor. She who created the world and all that is in it. That was a name for a goddess who is a creator. And the gods sat near the tree. She comes from the tree full of compassion because she is the tree is her. And she welcomes those who have recently died. She gives them food and drink, which gives them life after death in that way. The souls of those deceased are sitting on the branches like birds. If you remember the movie, those of you who saw the movie Black Panther, when he went back and he's going and having discussions about with the ancestors, the panthers were in the trees. The ancestors were the panthers and they were in the trees. So through this sacred tree, souls come back to the divine world of eternal beings who left only during this one human life and then they went back. So it's a constant regenerative process that Mother brings forth. And the tree is symbolic of that. Let's move on. Promise not to keep you. So we talk about the serpent, and we talk about the conversation. We bring the conversation about how the serpent and the meaning and the symbolism of the serpent is reinterpreted as evil and oppressive and bad. Stay away from the devil. Devi, root word for devil. Devi, Sanskrit word meaning goddess. You see, here's the flipping of words. The one thing men know how to do really well, we have an aptitude for telling untruths. We are very adept at it. You know why? Because we use military might and we will go to fisticuffs in the form of spear, dagger, arrow, bullet, missile, in order to prove that we were right and that God told us to commit genocide. God told me to kill these people. God told me to enslave these people. God told me to shoot George Floyd or to kill George Floyd. God told me to kill Tamir Rice. God, that's how men justify the police force, for instance. They really sincerely believe they are righteous in the construct, even when you challenge it. Whatever problems you have with Black Lives Matter, it was established by 3 Black women. I don't know whatever the hell else I got to say about that. Men didn't establish that. Women did. A lot of the men who were revolutionaries on the planet were influenced somewhere by women. I am one of them. So now we move into this conversation about this fruit. We then talked about the serpent. The serpent is in the tree. The serpent is bestowing wisdom and having conversation. Woman is having a conversation with her own wisdom and getting in tune with her regenerative powers. And man says, or she is told, because man is saying that he was talking to dad about this tree and the serpent. Now we talk about the fruit. People say apple. Some people have said pomegranate. I've heard some of everything. Mind you, the pomegranate is a symbol for the goddess and the multitude of seed, and those beautiful, they really taste wonderful. The multitude of seed inside of the pomegranate, inside of that fruit, when you eat that fruit, the multiple of seed there, the ability to regenerate more pomegranate in a mass multiple. The same thing with eggplant. So pomegranate is associated with the goddess Persephone. The eggplant is associated with Oya, who is interestingly a goddess of death. A type of death that comes with a swift and sudden change. When the winds change and cleanse the planet, Oya is there, the storm, the whirlwind, the hurricane. And there's a cleansing and a moving of space. And here is Oya. And one of her symbols is the eggplant. That's for this conversation. She has other symbols that represent death, that look like death, that deal with, in fact, death itself. She is called the death rattle. We won't get into those exacts. We will do so in a class, perhaps, whereby there can be some reciprocity of energy so that we can build this temple. We'll talk about that another time, okay? Here's this pomegranate, and there's plentiful. Have you ever opened an eggplant? You're talking about a lot of seed, baby. You see this constant regeneration. But patriarchy controls the conversation and controls agriculture on the planet, where one time women did. Women were, if you study the food sovereignty movement, women were controlled or controlling, or I don't even know if I want to use the word, women had the seed. Women held the seed. And when women hold seed, we understand in the food sovereignty movement around the planet, when women hold the seed, as they did at one point, the diversity of seed multiplies greatly in her hands. We don't have ideas, dumb ideas like monoculture. Monoculture is a male construct. So he can control the space between things, how many things are grown, rather than just having the seed there. I have a conversation. No, I won't. I'll have this conversation for a second. And then we'll get ready to close up as we pull some of this together. I was farming with my best friend and the co-director of the Dynamite Hill Smithfield Community Land Trust. She had bean seeds, black bean seeds. When she puts the seed out, she just throws them all over the place. Me, I'm having a panic attack because I want them lined up like this in perfect lines. But what happens is after she did that, she threw the dirt on it. It looks to me like it's not controlled inside of order. Was that there was an abundance of bean plant, tens of bean, multiplying the number of beans that we had. She produced abundance because it's natural for her to do that. She puts plants and food at her farm, Wamere Farm, in places that don't make any kind of sense to me. There's no logic. But there's a massive amount of flowers everywhere. Birds and hummingbirds come about because that's her thing. Mother is abundance. Mother is not starvation and lack and these dumb ideas that are killing people. So our priestess, Marie Seishat, speaks to abundance all the time and how life is abundant. That's one of the lessons I learned, that if you love the land will love you. She was talking as well about the abundance of the land. So food sovereignty is where people began to control the food and, most importantly, the ways in which that food moves. That's a mother concept. And a lot of the food sovereignty conversations on the planet, like that conversation by La Via Campesina, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and the African cultures and Asian cultures, South American, North American Native cultures, Canadian cultures, these indigenous and marginalized people, the conversation that they're having about food and sort of a return to mother and the seed being in women's hands is the idea that women will bring forth abundance. So let's take a look at some of these things, right? The control of the symbols of women's culture, and we could go on and on with that. The moon, the night sky, blood, as we've discussed, birth itself, life, death, regeneration, crystals, herbs, potions, spell work, women holding money, women moving money, women owning homes, houses, land. Our brains and Our spirits and our hearts, unfortunately, have been trained to see women as unable to control themselves and thus unable to control other things. They're talked about as if they're hysterical, which is a direct word that deals with the woman's womb. Hysteria, hyster. Again, I know I keep alluding to classes. That's another conversation. These are the stories. We even say things like, she's too emotional. She's unbalanced, imbalanced. She doesn't have balance. She needs to be balanced. She needs to be controlled. She's wild. She's irrational. She's not thinking logically. All of these things that are control dynamics brought through misogyny, misogynoir, and ultimately their damn daddy patriarchy, which is the first sin. And then a whole bunch followed that, including this control of symbols, serpent, tree, fruit, rooted in patriarchy, the power of males over all things, the power to define, control that definition, and redefine it, all based on the maintenance of power, all about physical, spiritual, mental militarization. So the only thing that he's got is this physicality that plays out in the spirituality. And that's about the only thing he's got over you, baby. What we've got to do is to take the narrative back. We've got to go into study, ancient study for meditation, hearing the word of women and the wisdom of women through women like the black doves that exist now, the black sibyls. Again, another conversation. These women who you will find sometimes in communities, and they're visionaries, and they have higher spiritual consciousness, and they're in tune with everything. Often these are black women and brown women. And we need to listen to them. They will guide us and move us where we need to go. But these symbols have got to be redefined or regenerated back into their own and original purpose. The serpent, a symbol of the mother. The tree, a symbol of the mother. Fruit, a symbol of the mother. All of these symbols of mother. All of her symbols. Everything that she is and never has been is there. We have to return to mother. We have to find her again, be with her, live with her, love with her, be in her. We've got to redefine the narrative. We've got to tell the true story of who mother is and who we are in mother. She is the all and the all and the all. She is death. She is life. She is death again. Endless circle of life is her circle. The endless. So if you've had someone who has passed away, their spirit is still very present. You just have to engage it. I leave you now, and I ask that if you wish to participate in this work, to help us build a temple here, I'm not calling you to join a temple. I'm asking you to help to build it and be with us in a circle of love and higher beingness, a return to mother, a return to being in tune with the earth and the wind, the fire and the water, the creek, the serpent, the tree, the fruit. I'm asking you to spend time with me, growing this temple, and we be together in that. And I say to you, my friends, my beloveds, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Greetings to she who grants desires, to she who is ever compassionate, to she who is ferocious, to she who resides in fire, to she who possesses Vajra, to she whose messenger is Shiva, to she who is ever victorious, to she who is bent with peace, to she who grants desires, to she who is ever compassionate, to she who is ferocious, to she who resides in fire. I am the black Daikini, goddess of the void. I am the night sky, empty of stars, the lake without reflections. When I take on human form, I am wrathful in appearance, with skin and hair that is blue-black and jewelry of jet and ebony. In a sky of deep sapphire blue, I sit upon a lotus with petals of gold and the center of black velvet. When I have two hands, I hold the vajra and the bell. When I have four hands, I also hold the noose and the gold. In my six-armed form, I add the axe and the mala. My true form is in the depths of space, the vast reaches of silence. But with the sound of a hum, I emerge in the form of a spinning black vajra edged in gold. All around me are hums like bees on a string, spinning, exploding, shooting blue pearls of light in every direction. I am called by many names. As Naratmiya, I am the dark face of the void, the waves upon the lightless ocean. I am the crow-headed goddess, flying high, my feathers in black, green, blue, and purple. I am the black goddess of death, who holds the world in my arms as I return to the deep waters. I am the mother who brings forth children from dark nothingness, who watches their lives and their deaths. I am a radical emanation of Vajra Daikini, she of rainbow crystal, yet I am also her origin out of the dark void. I may be of help to the aspirant, but I am dangerous, for I will take away all he possesses if he gives them up gladly. We will dance together in their ashes. But if he clings to them, he will lose his mind and his heart. I seek only beings ready for full liberation. Leave all behind, and we will find beauty in the emptiness that is ever compassionate, to she who is ferocious, to she who resides in fire, to she who possesses Vajra, to she who messenger Shiva, to she who is ever victorious, to she who is bent with peace, to she